Welcome to my newscast. My name is Luke Martin. I'm here with my assistant, Richard Massey. And today we're doing our newscast on the Civil War. The Civil War was a war from 1861 to 1864 between the North and the South, the Confederacy and the Union. The Confederacy was fighting for their rights, and the Union was fighting to keep the country together. The big misconception between the Civil War was that the Confederacy was fighting for slavery. Really, they were just fighting for their rights. There was many rights they were fighting for. And the Union, the big thing for them was they were fighting against slavery. Really, they weren't. Abraham Lincoln said if he could bring the country back together by freeing no slaves, he would do it. So I mean, really, he's just as bad as everybody else, kind of. So, of course, as you know, the Union did win, and it did end up bringing our country back together. And the biggest battle, the largest battle, was the Battle of Gettysburg. It was huge, and like 27,000 people died. And then the bloodiest day during the Civil War was the Battle of Antietam, where 50-something thousand people died in one day. And yeah, so now we have some questions to answer. Okay, me and my co-worker.
So my first question would be, was the Civil War necessary or unnecessary? You go ahead and go first.
I believe that the Civil War was necessary because to help bring our country back together, sometimes we need to have a fight. And it did bring our country back together in the long run. I do believe that slavery would eventually been abolished because of the way our society adapted, but I still think we needed it to bring our country back together.
I believe that the Civil War was unnecessary due to agricultural technology. I mean, basically, the Southern economy was booming based off agriculture, of course. That was their top priority. And now that new technology and variety of different inventions were brought to the South, slavery was seen as perhaps outdated and inhumane. I mean, I'm pretty sure that CSA wouldn't be quite happy with freeing slaves whatsoever, and would perhaps treat African Americans as second-class citizens, but they would eventually free the slaves. And I believe 800,000 individuals dying in such a bloody war was unnecessary, and CSA would have perhaps dissolved over time. And, yeah. Next question would be, was President Lincoln a tyrant, or was he perhaps a great president?
All right, me personally, I believe that Abraham Lincoln is a very overrated president. I do think that he did a decent job of getting us through the Civil War, but a lot of the things he did for the nowadays is he messed up our economy and stuff. And really, people think the big thing for him is he freed the slaves, but really that was not really his plan. He just wanted to bring the country back together, and that was the only way he knew to do.
I also believe that President Lincoln was perhaps overrated and a tyrant at that, because during before war times, of course, he had a plethora of Maryland legislators arrested because they basically advocated for diplomacy in America and basically fought against the Civil War and advocated for secession. And he also shut down 300 northern newspapers due to their advocacy for diplomacy in America. He also started the IRS, which, as you know, was the most ferocious government agency in the history of man. If you look at Lincoln's debate records and voting records, he was just as racist as perhaps Robert E. Lee or Jefferson Davis was, or Stonewall Jackson, due to him basically wanted to deport Africans or African Americans to Central America, and he didn't want them to be American citizens. So,
all right, next question is, would you fight if we lived in Arkansas during the Civil War times? Would you fight for Robert E. Lee on the Confederacy side, or would you go to Ulysses S. Grant in the Union?
I think it would be the better route, obviously, to fight for the Union, considering how advanced they were within this wartime. I mean, they had more men, they had perhaps a more dedicated force, they had far more generals, and they had more utility to use during warfare. So.
I would have to agree. It would be much smarter. You'd have a much higher chance of living if you fought for the Union. But at the same time, a lot of people might argue that you got to fight for your state, stay true to your home. You know, like Robert E. Lee. I mean, he didn't necessarily just support what the Confederacy was doing, but he wanted to fight for Virginia, his hometown, so that's what he did.
Well, on the topic of Lincoln being tyrannical, he basically caused Arkansas to secede due to him raising an illegal army to combat the Confederates. He caused Arkansas to secede or battle.
I
Okay.
have a question
Yes.
from the audience. Recently, we have noticed in the media how there have been multiple teachers who have been disciplined for creating a T-chart, positive and negative sides of slavery. Do either one of you gentlemen feel as though there's a positive side to slavery that we could learn?
Yeah. it's not really it's not positive, but look, a lot of the way viewpoints from a lot of people is everybody wants money. That's what everybody wants. Everybody wants money. They don't care how they get it. They just want money.
We have to look at the law of consequentialism. The Holocaust, slavery, and a multitude of different tragedies in world history basically resulted in the outcome of us being equipped with the knowledge that perpetrating these actions are inhumane and perhaps should never be introduced to any nation at that. So, yeah.
Do you think we'd be as advanced as we are now if it had not been for the work of the slaves?
No, the slaves practically established this nation on their back. They established the universities, they built the universities, etc. So, I believe that the slaves played a major role within establishing this nation.
I don't think anybody in this room can say they're against slavery because the clothes you're wearing right now are made by slaves.
Oh,
All the clothes you make right now are from China. Almost all the clothes you have on are from China, Indonesia, India, and they're all made by slaves. So if you guys say you're against slaves, then you'll have to buy all USA-made clothes.
just one last question, man. So if the Confederacy won, what would the outcome, how would that differ if the Union, which they obviously did win?
Obviously, slavery would eventually be abolished. I think that's just a given because it was just as you say, outdated method. But I don't know how different the times would be. I don't know how. I think we'd be a lot more racist probably. Black people would be a lot more mistreated than they probably already are. And you go.
Well, basically, if the Confederacy came out victorious, I believe that yes, slavery obviously would have been abolished. Jefferson Davis himself, who, if you didn't know, was the first and last president of the Confederacy, was a proponent of freeing the slaves as long as they received educational standards after being freed. And he owned 74 slaves himself. Also, the Confederacy, they did have significant trading partners in the cotton industry with European nations, and Europe didn't want to get involved within the Civil War due to the fact that they knew the Confederacy was going to lose beforehand due to their, lack of men and cease of warfare material. So I think perhaps there would be no significant difference besides more discrimination within the South throughout the time periods. We have Jim Crow, obviously, and a variety of other. Well, I've been using a variety of. I apologize for that, but numerous more methods to discriminate against African Americans in society, especially in the South. So, yeah. I guess that concludes our newscast.
All right. Does anybody have any questions before we conclude our newscast? Anybody?
No.
When you said the Confederacy didn't have any generals, I believe that is actually false.
No, they did.
I
have
believe
generals.
the Confederate Army had a way superior.
Yeah, they had better
leadership.
generals.
Yeah,
Robert
they
E.
did.
Lee, Stonewall Jackson.
Ulysses S. Grant was like a drunk. Nobody liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was speaking from a quantitative standpoint. Yes, the Confederacy did have far more they had a more advanced mentality when it comes to terms of war positions and perhaps engaging in combat. But when you look at the quantity of generals, the Union obviously outranks the Confederacy in every category. So
Yeah, they just had more people, more guns, better guns. Just it was outnumbered. They were just outnumbered.
Okay, so if Abraham Lincoln was so bad, then why do we always worship him in different stories, different schools, different basically everything? And he's constantly known as the man who freed slaves, when personally,
you know,
Well, because as Miss Nolan has told us, the history books sometimes aren't as accurate as you make them seem.
They're
'Cause
never accurate.
yeah, they're never accurate. So we get the good side of Lincoln. We get the, oh, he made the Emancipation Proclamation. He did this. He did that. He really was not the greatest guy. I mean, he did what he needed to do to bring the country back together, and I respect him for that. But some people may, if you were there when you were alive, and when he lived during his time period, I bet you have a lot different viewpoint on him.
Also, so basically, that's kind of a continuous, record within public schools and school systems in general that figures that were quite significant in American history, such as President Lincoln, FDR, Woodrow Wilson, LBJ, etc. They weren't actually good as they're typically portrayed in history books. For example, I mean, we just listed off the reasons why Lincoln would perhaps be considered a tyrant in modern ages, and in FDR's case, I mean, like, he established Japanese concentration camps on American soil. Also, the New Deal, which is commonly